This session is about a new feature called Skype Meeting Broadcast. Who of you have heard of it? Looking forward to it? Will it address scenarios your customers are looking for?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I have a small disclaimer, or maybe even a big disclaimer. It's in red on the right side of the slide. It's preview content. Everything we know now is in this deck. All the interfaces, how it looks like if you set up a meeting, everything is there, state of 2 weeks ago. You will be doing the same thing in your lab in one of the exercises. I would not be surprised if things look a little different, because this is work in progress. There are a couple of things in there of which we say, couldn't we have done that a little bit different? Couldn't we improved on that? Yes, and probably we are improving on that, and we are changing that. There might be a lot of questions that I cannot answer because I do not have all the details yet. It's still work in progress, so bear with me. I will take you through Skype Meeting Broadcast, and if you have questions, I'll try to answer them, but probably I cannot answer all of them. So, what is it we're going to do? We're going to look at the background. Why do we need this? Why do we want this? Then I'll talk you through the whole meeting life cycle. What does it mean to organize? And that's basically what it is, because a link meeting or a Skype for Business meeting is something you just schedule in your calendar. This is a bit more. How do I run a Skype broadcast meeting? What do I have to do to set it up? What do I have to do during and after the meeting? So I'll take you through these steps. Then a small section for the IT Pro, basically describing the components of the solution. What is where? How is it run? How is it set up? And last but not least, there's a part for the AV Pro there, because this is also about professional content, professional rendering, and I'll show you some things that can help you enhance your meeting. So, if we look at the background, in the OCS days, Link days, and even the early Skype for Business days, we started off with our normal meetings. Normal meetings that had a maximum size of 250 users. But there was a request for many of our customers to have large-scale meetings. And our answer was the large meeting setup. Who's ever done that? Not many of you. Basically, what it means is you're setting up a dedicated pool in your organization, a dedicated pool that's only used for hosting larger meetings that go up to 1,000 persons. And it's a lot of infrastructure for such a meeting. And what we found is that for some organizations it works, because they have a reasonable number of these larger meetings, and they will not go above 1,000. But typically, for larger organizations, 1,000 is not enough, and the investment is too high. And that's where we step in with broadcast meeting. And broadcast meetings is typically a different type of meeting than a Link or a Skype for Business meeting. And the difference is, if you look at these Skype for Business meetings with 250 users, or the large meetings, it can be an interactive meeting. It's typically the same functionality you know from a normal Skype for Business meeting, but then extended to a couple of hundred or maybe even 1,000 users. Question is, if you have a 800, 900 user meeting, can that be an interactive meeting? I guess it will be difficult, but it's still there. Broadcast meetings currently will scale up to 10,000 users. And it's not an interactive meeting. Not an interactive meeting in the way Link or Skype for Business meetings are interactive. It's more a broadcast. A small team of people preparing a meeting, sending the message, presenters, and a lot of attendees listening in and communicating through other channels. And what these other channels are, we'll show later on. So, as I said, the broadcast meeting is a typical town hall meeting. And actually, we have these meetings with Satya every month. It's like an informal session of 1 hour broadcasted throughout whole Microsoft, and we can join using Skype for Business broadcast meetings. That's the type of meeting we're aiming at. We have a small team, we have one presenter, we have more presenters, we have some content, and we have audience tuning in all over the world and listening and interacting in our case, Yammer. So what we typically see is, and especially for these town hall meetings that we do, and I think that's a perfect example, is we have people all over the world tuning into our meeting, using just a browser and connecting to it. And there's typically a room like this where people are present and they see the presenter. So it's a room full of people joining the inner circle of the meeting, and then it's broadcasted out. If you look at the pillars where it's built on, and this is the vision of how it should work, I think that the first thing is a very important one. It's a familiar way of working, as we know it from Link, as we know it in Skype for Business. So we schedule through Outlook. We can work with our familiar clients to send out meeting events. Our producement team is typically a group of people that will organize the meeting, and during the meeting will control what is being broadcasted. Things like which video source to select, which presenter to enable, which content to show. They all work out of a familiar client. They just work out of the Skype for Business client. So for them, it's as if they're doing a meeting, what they're doing every day. But now, because they're in a broadcast meeting, they have some extra controls, but it's still a Skype meeting. We also realized that to be able to deliver this content to 10,000 people, or who knows, even more later on, we would not be able to do that through our on-premises Link server deployment or Skype for Business deployment, or even from the traditional Office 365 environment. What we want is, or what we needed, was a mechanism to deliver content to a huge number of users connecting from all over the world. So what we could have done was build something, an extension on Skype for Business, and build it on our own. But the first thing we did was we looked around and see what is in the market today. And in the market today is our Azure Media Services, a service that is aimed at broadcasting, delivering media all over the world. I think like the Olympics we had a couple of years ago, all the content was broadcasted through Azure Media Services. So it proves like it's a very large network that can deliver media services, and we're just reusing that and building on top of that. The idea is that the audience just has a very simple join experience. They just join through a web browser, they click on it, and they can watch the meeting. And even if they tune in later or they want to review something, there is a sort of a start and stop mechanism. You can go back. There's like a sort of a PVR functionality in there. And last but not least is these meetings, you want some kind of feedback. And doing feedback in the way we are used to in Skype for Business or Link with just IM and Q&A, that's probably not going to scale. It's not going to scale to 10,000 people. What we've chosen is we've taken these side applications like Yammer, like Bing Pulse, and we'll see that later on, to ask questions and to moderate. And coming back to this town hall meetings that we internally have, you will see that there is a Yammer group that is opened way before the meeting starts. People start posting their questions in. There's a lively question and answer with all the attendees. And during the meeting, there is a moderator that will pick out the most important questions and raise them during that presentation or during that meeting. So, what are the basic building blocks of such a meeting? There's a question in the back.
Is the broadcast service for large internal meetings, or is it also for external? And if it's for external, do the external users have to also have a Yammer account to? ask questions. And
Okay, it's a good question. The question, and I'll repeat the question and slightly rephrase it. Is it a service that is focused on internal people? The answer is no. The service is focused on everybody. Depending on how you want to organize your meeting, just internal to your company or external, you control that through authentication, or you can just make an open meeting. It's just focused on everybody. Do you need additional accounts? Well, if you start enabling things like, for example, Yammer, of course you need an account on that. But it's not focused on the enterprise, it's focused on the meeting. Yeah?
Okay, so the only way you get feedback or questions would be through Yammer.
Okay, so the question is, how do I get feedback back to the presenter? How do I get feedback to the meeting that's going on? Yes, that's through Yammer. Yammer is, at this time, the channel that we use to solicitate for feedback, to have like the side conversations and get them back to the room. And of course, Yammer is not open. You need to have some kind of Yammer access. Okay.
Just another question.
The question is, will that change? At this time, I don't know. We at this moment, and I'll show them a little later in the deck, we have a couple of site applications that we support. I do not believe that this is the end of the site applications, and we'll probably see different and other types of interaction. Yeah? Question over there?
Is the product at the stage where you've determined what the bandwidth requirements would be?
I have a slide on that later on that shows some numbers. Of course, bandwidth is a concern. And for example, if we'll talk about it later on, but there are some concerns that you could have if you're looking at an enterprise meeting. So I'll park that to a later slide, but it's a good question.
Just real quick, I was going to add for the Yammer conversation, they are working on a Q&A manager to add in. So.
Yeah, they have third-party add-ins coming in too, I think.
Yeah, they are looking at baking something in. They just don't have a timeline yet.
Yeah. Okay. So if you look at the building blocks of a broadcast meeting, basically you have, let's start off with what we call the production team, or the people that really, the presenters. These presenters will use a Skype meeting. So these presenters, and we have different roles in there, a producer, we have a remote speaker or a local speaker, we have some video sources, and last but not least, maybe we have some auditorium or studio AV. Basically, all these sources of information, this could be a speaker with a Skype client joining in, or joining from a LRS room, or maybe even joining from a room like this with professional video. That is a source to that link or Skype for Business meeting. Also, other video sources. There's everything that is fed into that meeting, including the presentations, all sources, and they will all run into that Skype for Business meeting. That is what we call the inner meeting that runs on Skype for Business. And we'll later on see how the client reacts if we are actually joining that inner meeting, because it exposes some new things in our client. Once we have that meeting, we then of course have to distribute it out. And we have to distribute it to up to 10,000 people at this point in time. And that's why we use the content delivery network from Azure. And basically what happens is this inner meeting then outputs its content to the content delivery network from Azure. And then the attendees come into play, and what they do is they connect through a normal web browser from their mobile device or from their PC to that Azure content delivery network. And this is the high-level overview, the different building blocks. So it's good to realize that we have a Skype for Business meeting going on, what we call the inner meeting, where only the people that are in the real meeting, the presenters, the producer are in their role in Skype for Business, and the meeting content, the produced content that has video, audio, presentation, is pushed out to Azure Media Services and then delivered to the clients. Have a question?
Yeah. So just to be clear, that attendee will attend through a browser although it may be someone who is a part of that tenant who has the Skype for Business client, the content is not delivered through a connection through the Skype client.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Only the inner circle, the producers, the presenters will be part of that inner Skype for Business meeting. All attendees, all people that listen into the meeting will connect through Azure Media Services. So there is no client involved. It's just straightforward from their browser. There's another question over there.
So did you mention the limitation on the total number of inter-meeting attendees?
Sorry, can you speak up a little?
Did you mention the total, the upper limit to the inter-meeting attendees?
No, I didn't. I didn't mention a number on that. I wouldn't know a number, but I believe that if the inner circle gets bigger than the outer circle, we've reached the limit. What you will probably see is it's just the people that have this that are part of the meeting. Will you really organize a meeting that has 100 speakers? Probably not. It will be a very small group, but 100 is not a problem. And I believe that if I would have to call out a number, I would say 250, which is our meeting limit. But if you're organizing a Skype broadcast meeting and your inner circle is 250 people, I guess you have some other issues and challenges to do. Typically, and we see that we have these internal events, and for example, we have one coming up which is called Tech Ready. We have 6,500 people coming to Seattle to listen to keynotes and conferences. A keynote like that, you have like 5 or 6 speakers and 2 or 3 people who manage the whole meeting. It's usually a very small team because the more people you have, the more chaotic your meeting will become. Question in the back.
Who would you consider the major competitors to this product?
Who would I consider the major competitor? I don't have an answer to that. I'm not the marketing guy. I'm sorry. Maybe Wayne has some names, but I do not have any insight in that.
Divulge.
No, that would. I'm the wrong person to ask. Sorry for that. So let's question.
Would you say that those are more for a long-term deployment, or more for like very short-term, one-shot meetings?
So the question is, these types of meetings, are they a long-term deployment or are they just one-off meetings? I guess they're a bit of both. The type of meetings that you will see will happen frequently. Maybe for a company like Microsoft, we have these meetings, these town hall meetings, every month. And so they're one-shot meetings because they're not happening daily and you do not have like 10, 15 of these meetings going on every day. They will happen at intervals, but when you have this setup, you will reuse that over the course of time. Yeah? Good. So let's look at the meeting cycle. How do you set up a meeting? And you will be doing that in your lab too, but I'll give you some preview on how that really works. If we look at the meeting lifecycle, it all starts off with the pre-meeting activities. You have to schedule this meeting, just like you would schedule a Skype for Business meeting. But scheduling the meeting is a little different. We do not do that from Outlook. What we do is we have a special portal, and I'll show you the portal later, where we are defining the meeting. We're scheduling time and place. We're adding the members of the team that will be moderating, that will be producing. We have the speakers in there. And basically what we also manage is the way the access is controlled to that meeting. And what we're seeing right now is we have anonymous, open, or authenticated access to the meeting. Open would be like everybody who has the join URL can just join to that broadcast meeting. Authenticated would mean based on user IDs. I know that this is an area where we are still developing. There are plans to update this and look at, for example, everybody who is on my tenant has access, like a company meeting, things like that. So the authentication part is still under construction. We now have a couple of types of authentication, but we are changing that with the new iterations. What you also do during that pre-meeting is customize how that meeting will look. Think of a meeting broadcast that has your own company logo in there, that has a special makeup, that web page. You will not see all of these controls in your current lab, but that's what we're looking at, a whole brand experience that shows this is a meeting that company X, Y, or Z is organizing, and you can recognize it as such. Also, what happens before the meeting? There's like curtains, there's like a video displayed, things like that. That will be the customizing of that meeting. Additionally, the last thing that you will do is you'll set up what we call the attendee engagement extensions. Basically, things like Yammer, like Bing Pulse, or other Q&A managers, things that are coming in. And this is how that looks. So there is a special scheduling portal, and in that scheduling portal, you can build out your own meeting. Basically, what you do is you start to create a new meeting, and the web page works you through all the different things that you need to make that meeting reality, which is the members, the teams, the side apps, everything is done throughout that portal. At the end, what you will get is a join URL, and this join URL, that's a URL that you're then going to distribute to your users, to your attendees by mail or by customized invitation. At this moment in time, the scheduling portal does not provide a way to send out invitations to the people you invite. Will that change? I don't know. I guess there will be changes in that area to be expected. When you start customizing, you basically have to look at your meeting portal and visualize the meeting portal and how it would look to the attendee. And what you can do is, of course, content is a major part of your total screen estate. But we have areas on the right and on the bottom that you can assign special functions. You can add URLs where people can click on if they have video problems. For example, they join the meeting and there is no video. There could be a URL that they click on which will directly send them to a audio-video help desk, especially for this meeting. We can have customized links that bring them to content, things like closed captioning. That is all being added to that particular attendee page. Additionally, you will configure the Yammer or Bing Pulse as a side app to that meeting. So, as I said, there are a couple of extensions. At this moment, it's either Bing Pulse or Yammer. Yammer is used to do the interactive part, ask questions, respond into the community. If you look at Bing Pulse, a mechanism, who's aware of Bing Pulse, has ever worked with it? It's basically, it's providing you a pulse of what is going on. And in the animation, what you see is a couple of questions, and we use Bing Pulse at large events, but also at smaller events. And basically what happens is, if questions are asked, if people give answers, so for example, there's an interview, the interviewer asks a question, and based on the response, people react with a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and then you will see like a pulse that says, we're positive about this guy is doing or negative. That's really nice if you have a 10,000 user meeting, and everybody uses that because it's next to the meeting content, and every time somebody says something, they can respond like with a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and then everybody can see the pulse and how people react. What Brian mentioned was the Q&A. That's a third-party product that is also being added to one of the possibilities as a side app, and we'll probably see more over time. So we've set up our meeting, and now we're ready to start our meeting. And basically, we have two types of people joining that meeting. One is the attendees, the other ones are the ones that present, that are the audience, the producers, the moderators. Let's first look at the audience join experience. As I said, you were provided with that link, and that link is distributed to you in some way, probably via mail. Brings you to a web page, and you have the possibility to join as an attendee. The moment the attendee joins, the web browser will launch, and the picture below shows the broadcast that will start. Now it says the broadcast has not started, but remember these customization options. What we will see is a more customized web page, and maybe broadcast has not started, changes into a company logo and other things around that make it a real personal meeting. During that meeting, the moment that meeting starts, you can see that the whole layout of the screen changes. Top left is just not only video. Middle one is video plus content. And the bottom one shows there's video, the video of the content. And on the right side, there is the Bing Pulse. So the producer, during the meeting, can control what the audience sees, the way the screen looks like. And it's basically the same as what's happening in the back of the room right now. We video, and there's somebody sitting behind a desk and is controlling how that product at the end looks. He switches between my face and the content and back again. And he does that at specific moments where he thinks that the attention should be on the content or on me. That's the role that the producer will have in the broadcast meeting. If you look at the event team controlling that meeting, basically they will join in the similar manner by using that same join link, but now they will join as an event or team member. And basically what happens is their Skype for Business client will open up, but as you can see on the right there are special controls that control the different video sources, that control the content, that control the presenters. My ugly mug is up there. There's a blue bar over my video. Basically what that says is the producer has chosen to put my video on screen. If you have multiple video sources, the producer in this client could click on any of these sources and determine, listen, this is the video we're going to send out to every attendee. And on the right, he can choose between the different layouts, like let's have video only, we have video and content, or maybe just content only. So the producer is in control how the full meeting experience for the attendees is. What we think of as different people that will be joining the meeting, they will all be joining into the same inner meeting, and they will all be using their Skype for Business client. But basically what we have is three types of people. Producers, that's what I talked about on the previous slide. They will control which video, which content, and they will control the layout during that meeting. Then we have presenters, and the presenters can be just one or multiple people who will just join that meeting and present as if they're presenting in a normal Skype for Business meeting. There is no difference for them. At least there's one very small detail that changes. If you are, who has the experience when we're all in a meeting and then somebody is asked a question and then 2 seconds later somebody says, you're still on mute. Yeah, I think you're all lying. I think everybody has that, because every single meeting I'm in, somebody starts to speak up and he's on mute and he can't find the button and it's always the same. We don't want that in a broadcast meeting like that. So what we do is if the producer selects you as a presenter, unmutes you, at that point in time, you are unmuted. You don't have to do anything yourself. You don't have to push any buttons. The producer can mute you and unmute you in the opposite to a normal link meeting or a Skype for Business meeting, where if I unmute you, you still have to unmute yourself. And that's the only difference. So the presenter, he can have audio, he can have content, he can have video, and the producer selects what he will show from that presenter. Last one, the last role is the moderator role. That is not typically a Skype for Business role. Yes, he will be in the Skype for Business client, maybe looking at what is being presented, but he will have these side apps. This will be a moderator that looks at the Bing Pulse, or this will be a moderator that looks at Skype for, at the Yammer client. And the way we do it in our town hall meetings is we typically have somebody in a desk in the room looking at the Yammer client, and every now and then she or he speaks up and says, listen, I have a question on Yammer. She poses the question and the presenter responds to that. Question over there.
Although the producer has
Closer to the mouth, please.
Although the producer has the control over the speaker, is the active speaker control still active?
No, it's the active speaker control is not there. It's actually the producer that takes care of the audio.
And I just wanted to real quick clarify. So these are roles that you're designating people for, but they're not entering the meeting with these specific roles. They're always just coming in as essentially a producer, presenter, moderator, correct?
So the way you join the meeting is either as a attendee or as a event team member. And by doing certain things in that meeting, you assume one of these roles. And if it's a very small event team, I could imagine that maybe one of the presenters and the producer is the same, but it's basically what they're doing. That's
it's just kind of confusing the way it's been presented at times, so that people think that there's different roles that you're actually getting different permissions.
yeah. I can see the confusion, and I understand because we talk about these different roles and what they do, but they will all join as a event team member, and at this time, they do not differentiate in what they can and cannot do. Will that change? I don't know. Maybe. We'll see later on. So, in this current version, there are a couple of things that you need to know. If you, at this point in time, schedule a meeting for next week, you get the URL, everything's set up, you send out your meeting URL to all your users, and then you decide to do a little rehearsal. Let's start the meeting and see how that works. The moment you end that meeting, remember, you cannot restart the broadcast. So you either leave it open till 3 months later when the meeting really occurs, or, and that will probably happen, you will have to end the meeting and reschedule it again, because there is no rehearsal mode. One of the things of which I think we could do better in that. At this point in time, we don't have that. We talked about the producers can unmute the presenter. It's a direct unmute. Of course, it heavily relies on features and functionality in the Skype for Business client. And since this is constantly evolving, you need the latest version of the client, because some of the functionality will only light up in that latest version of the client. If you look at the side apps, separate clients are required. And other things like an LRS system. If you have people joining from a LRS-equipped room or from a Service Hub-equipped room, you have to drag them in because they cannot join from a meeting URL. We talked about setting up the meeting, during the meeting, and of course there is a after the meeting. And the after the meeting is basically the post-meeting activities. You might want to control recording, so you might record that meeting so people can look back. So you have to do something with that recording. You have to put it in the right place, make it accessible for people. But also there is a meeting info or a post-meeting report. And this report contains a list of everybody who joined the meeting, what they did, what kind of browser they used, did they join it, did they pause it. So it will give you an overview of what each attendee did during that meeting, which is of course very nice. You can see how many people were in the meeting, how long they were in the meeting, if they really cared. And this kind of information is used for your own feedback on your meeting, but it can also be used to maybe send out a meeting summary via email to the people that actually attended. There's a question over there. 1 second.
So can we go back to that LRS system joining comment? So I'm assuming that experience would be different for the people in that room, as they would would they be a part of that inner circle meeting?
If the presenter is, that will always be a presenter, of course, or somebody in the inner circle. And because the LRS has no option to go to that web page and click on that link or that join URL, that's why somebody from the event team in the inner meeting will just drag the LRS in, and then it's the same experience.
Okay, so that needs to be properly positioned, that if they're wanting to use a conference room with one of those systems in it, it should be someone on that is presenting and not attending.
Yes, absolutely. Yep, I agree. If we take a closer look at what the solution is and how it's built, basically this is the model that we're looking at. As I said, we talked about this inner meeting, and if you look at the overview of all the different components, and we start on the left, this is your own Skype for Business deployment. Maybe an on-premises deployment, maybe a cloud deployment, or a hybrid deployment. The thing that is in the left box, the gray left box, is your own link or Skype for Business deployment. Users from your own organization are known within that Skype for Business organization. Then there is a federation with the broadcast meeting pools. And at this point in time, we have 3 of these pools. There is a APAC pool, a North America pool, and an EMEA pool. Will this stay like this? Will this change? I don't know. We'll probably add multiple pools, but we have these different pools at this moment. And then, of course, these pools connect to the Azure Media Services and the Content Delivery Network. If we zoom into what happens if you run that meeting, typically, if you organize the meeting, you will organize the meeting to run on one of the broadcast meeting pools, depending on your own tenant. And the moment you start your inner meeting, the clients will join that inner meeting that is run on one of these meeting pools. At that point in time, that's where the inner meeting runs, and that's where the content is then forwarded to the Azure Media Services. The way it's set up is it is a federated provider, content provider to our on-premises or our own Office 365 tenant. If you configure it, and that's basically what you see what was illustrated in the drawing before, it's all about a hosting provider. You define a new hosting provider within your existing Skype for Business environment, and you tell it that if you want to do certain things, this is where you have to go out to. These are the broadcast meeting pools that you have to go out to. And there are a couple of domains that you have to add as allowed domains. And now you can see that the same broadcast domains are being returned here: North America, EMEA, and APAC. Also, we have to make some changes in our firewalls. Not all of our organizations allow access to these particular domains. We come across organizations that have a very tight security and will not allow access to these different domains. This is just an overview of what we are reaching out to. So if you have these tightly managed internet setup in your customers, you'll have to add that. If you look at the question on the right, let me... Yeah, we have a bit of a shortage of mics because you're the first audience that is eating up all our mics. I've done this a lot, and I always end it with the amount of mics I had when I started. I think we're now down 3 mics, and we still have 1 left. So,
I'll try not to break this one for you. Back to the way the media was traveling on the slide before there. Assuming that this is using H.264, that similar style of encoding, is that being directly ingested already in 264 format into the Azure Media Services ingest servers there? Or basically what I'm getting at is where are we encoding the H.264 video for the meetings themselves? Is that going to require hardware change?
It's a great question. And I guess if you hear me say this is a great question, you can guess the next step. I do not have all the details.
Okay.
I would like to have all the details, and of course, since we're running a Skype for Business meeting, H.264 video format and things like that, yes, that will happen. But what the magic exactly is between the inner meeting and once it's handed over to the Azure Media Services, I do not have any insight in that. Will I ever get insight in that? I'm not sure.
Okay, so basically at this point in time, there wouldn't be any additional hardware level encoding requirements on like the on-premise Skype for Business.
No, it's just a straightforward
Okay.
Skype for Business meeting.
All right, that's all I had.
So
This won't work. So keep
one, just one
Question
item
over there?
Just one item to add into that while Wayne travels himself to the back end, right? Because you like to do that. First, realize that it's an Azure Media Composer that joins the Skype for Business meeting. That Skype for Business meeting is not running on your premises. That Skype for Business meeting is in our forest, right? So nothing is happening on premises, which I'm sure you've...
the inner meeting is in the broadcast meeting pools.
Yeah, that's not happening there. And then the Azure Composer, we send H.264 as one of the streams. So, I mean, there's not much that it has to decode or encode. So.
But, I mean, we do send H.264 full HD streams today, so we're doing this already, so there is nothing else from that.
Question in the back.
I think he may have just answered, but my question was for internal users that are not presenters, so you have, say, 10,000 people you want to consume this meeting that are internal to your network, they would still have to consume it via the internet. You would still have to traverse the internet to get to there.
It's a good question. It's the same question that came up over there. We're not there yet.
Okay.
But I guess we're getting close, and it's this one, the video distribution. I was just, let me see, I almost skipped over because I went back.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good question. 2 slides, please.
Sure.
So if we look at the attendee settings and what it is, the admin settings and what the admin can do, basically the admin can configure the way the scheduled meetings behave. Configuration around, for example, recording. There is a way to enforce encoding. There's a way to disable recording or enable it on request. There are things like themes and logos and branding and things like that. At this point in time, most of these features are not implemented. Some of them are there already, but there's more to come when we go into the next couple of months. There's a list of settings that we control via policy, via other configuration methods. Some of them are per tenant. For example, the broadcast meeting recording, what I talked about on the previous slide, that's something that you will enable or disable per tenant. But there is also things that apply to users. Do we allow our users to create and set up meetings that are accessible to everybody in the whole world and not restrict them to our own company? These are the settings that we have right now, and we will see these settings appear more and more and in a more structured way. And now the question about what I heard in the back on video distribution and what about users that are inside your company. Imagine the following scenario. You have a town hall meeting and you have a location with 150 people that are all at that time connecting to that town hall meeting. That might be a challenge because what is happening at current state of affairs is every single user will get the content from the Azure Media Services, which could mean that you're streaming 150 times the same content through your firewalls, through your proxies going in. That might pose an issue. The way we address that at this moment is the moment congestion is showing, we will adjust the bit rate. The bit rate will go down, and there's like a couple of resolutions that we'll see right here, frame rates and the bandwidth expected. But that, of course, is not the final solution. The final solution should be in changing these 150 streams that we're getting into our organization into one, and then have some kind of distribution mechanism internal our organization. That's what we're looking at, and that's what we called software-defined networking. I don't like that. It's the same discussion as Brian this morning had about what is hybrid or what are sites. This is, again, something that we also use in other ways of working, and especially with Link and Skype for Business. But basically what we're looking at is third parties that will help us distribute the video across all the other workstations within the same organization. Think of 1 or 2 or 3 designated workstations will receive the content and then distribute it within the organization. At this time, I have no real solution to talk about. I do not have a vendor to talk about, but we are working with that, and we're expecting announcements in the near future. And for now, it will probably be a third-party solution that will be added to these type of broadcast meetings.
Francois, just to kind of add myself into the hijack your presentation a bit. So I played a bit with the media services here, and what we're doing here is technically a progressive download. So the video, it's not a streaming. We're not streaming the entire video at once, but we're doing a progressive download, which is like small chunks of the video. So the video is sliced into small chunks, and we're progressively downloading the video. So like 20 seconds at a time. And by doing this, those are individual HTTP downloads, and those are rather cache friendly. So if you have a capable caching infrastructure, so like a caching proxy, it is somewhat likely that this will at least help with some of the bandwidth constraints. Maybe not with everything, but it should help you to some extent to kind of provide some level of caching and avoiding like 150 simultaneous downloads. It's not the same. Not the same level as solution as we will reach once we have the Azure CDN and the SDN type thing in place, but it should help you at least a bit even today.
Thank you for the input. I didn't look into that deeply, but I do have some questions around what would it mean, because we have our content which is fully encrypted. It's HTTPS content, and how would that work with our caching mechanisms? And I know that in the original setup of broadcast meetings, we looked at HTTP. That was great, and then the caching mechanisms and everything were available, but somebody made us change that into HTTPS. So there might be a challenge in caching this.
Yeah, no, just to add on, I was telling Martin, we talked to the program manager at Airlift, and they did make a change to where this is all HTTPS. So HTTP caching proxies aren't going to work. Yep. They're not going to.
The original product had it on HTTP, which was a lot friendlier towards caching, but that's no longer there. And I think there are some benefits of doing it through HTTPS, but there also are some setbacks.
Yeah, and just on the SDN one, I typically call it software-defined ECDN, because it really isn't that. It's really content distribution. So
yeah,
more letters for you.
Basically, what you see is a solution that is installed on each and every client, and then inside your organization will start to figure out how to best distribute the content. For the AV Pro, I think we have 2 in the back, but maybe you will become AV Pros the moment you start doing this. Of course, we want just a professional video in there. Just having a laptop with somebody's face like this because he's not in front of the video cam, or having a bad video cam or a bad video cam setup with lights in the back and for an open window. That's probably not what you want if you're organizing a meeting that is broadcasted to 10,000 people. Yeah, something like that, yeah. So we have the ability to add professional content, professional video cameras into the mix. The way we do that is by use of that little box, for example, by the use of that little box which is right here. I think that Brian has one in his hand at the moment. You can barely see it, and basically what it is, it's a little converter device that hooks up to your PC. On one hand, it has a USB 3 port. On the other side, it has an HDMI. And basically what happens is, if you connect it up to your workstation, it will present itself as yet another video source. So the producer will see other video source, which is your professional camera, and then can select it. So we have this multiple options of adding professional sound and professional video to your meeting. And I guess if you're doing that for these large size of meetings, you better do that, and you better rehearse and make sure that it works.
Really helpful when you want to do desktop share too, by the way.
Yep.
Because you can't do desktop share natively in a broadcast meeting. It has to be a video stream. So You do your desktop share, it shows as a video stream, shows as a webcam. Now I can do desktop share.
It's basically comparable to the same mechanism as we have on LRS, where we can capture the screen grabbing and bring it into our link or our Skype meeting. So you'll probably end up buying these kinds of devices if you really want to have professional content moving into your meeting. This I just talked about the way it integrates with your Skype for Business meeting. That brings me to the end. I do realize that I've not given you all the details you wanted, because I don't have them either. And questions like the gentleman in the back, from how does this look from a coding perspective and signaling perspective, I do not have all the answers. And I also realize that by moving in this type of solutions, cloud-based solutions, we will not always get all the answers. For example, how does my Office 365 cloud look like? What kind of server roles? How does it integrate with this and that product? We don't know that anymore. It's no longer important. We're looking at a services side instead of a server side. But with that, I hope I've given you an insight in what's coming and what's there. You will be doing that in your own labs. And if there are no more questions. Oh, question over here.
Question here too.
Wayne?
No, I was just looking around to see if anybody had one.
Yeah, here's one.
He does.
Oh, right here.
But I
Okay,
won't.
sorry, I didn't see your hand.
One sec.
What?
He's got it.
Gentleman over here.
Sorry, I think it was on the deck yesterday. Is Skype Broadcast can only be available for E3 and E5? Will it not be available for E1?
It is available for E1. E1 and up.
Okay, thank you.
E1 and up.
When is going to be available? I mean, when it's GA for this?
2 days.
Do you have more timelines?
Yeah, it's going to launch in like 2 days.
It's going to launch in 2 days. Yep.
Like you'll be in the middle of doing your lab, and they'll be changing over to the production servers. So yeah. So.
Sorry.
Yeah, you'll get curtains and.
I was just playing with it. I scheduled a broadcast meeting, but it didn't send out invites to
It doesn't
anybody.
send. It doesn't send out invites.
No.
No.
It's not supposed to send out invites.
How does it ask for people's email addresses then?
That's the security mechanism for them to be able to sign into the meeting.
So the question is twofold. I've just set up a broadcast meeting, and it didn't send out any meetings throughout mail. That's as designed at the moment. It will not send out emails. Second question was, why do I then need email addresses? Well, basically what you're providing is not email addresses, but is a method of authentication is what it is. Gentleman over here.
Yeah, so during the broadcast, is there the ability to stream a video as content?
As long as it's a video stream.
Yep.
Yeah. But it has to in the producer's view, it has to be a video stream. They can't just like upload a file and say present this. Somebody has to play the video like outputted to HDMI, which comes back in through USB. You got to dork around to get it to work. You can't just say present this video. Blah. No,
because you're not present.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Yeah. It's V1. Come on. We got to have room for improvement.
0.9 it is. Tomorrow it's
Really?
V1. Yeah. Or in 2 days. Last question in the back, and then I'll hand you over to Brian, who is going to introduce
I don't know
the
if you
labs.
already mentioned this. Is there like a demo of this product that we can go play with?
Yes, there is.
You're going to do it in a minute.
Oh, okay. Well,
you will play with it in the lab.
Is it going to be available like for us to play with at home? Or
Well, so there is a preview that's out today, but I mean, as of like in 2 days, it's going to launch. So, there's not going to be a
Skype experience would be the way, but
the way that you would play with it at that point would be go get a demo tenant that has like E3, and that'll have.
So if you have a customer that's interested in this and they want to trial it, then it would be that method of getting a demo tenant, right?
Yeah, but if the customer's already got a tenant and they have at least an E1 license, they're going to have it.
Okay.
It's going to be there. They'll get it. Yeah.
Well, I know you guys probably aren't answering licensing questions, but how is it priced or licensed?
It's in the license. If they have E3, E5, E1, then ta-da.
Okay, so it's not per meeting or per usage or anything like that?
Nope.
Okay.
The only people that need to be assigned the licenses are the folks that are in the inner meeting. That's it.
And they only need a license to be able to broadcast. No, there's no attendee licenses. There's no attendee minutes. There's no.
Nope.
I think it's a super compelling, thing. So.
Repeat the question.
On-premises people, they have to have a presence in the cloud, and they have to have a license assigned to them, and off they go. They don't have to live in the cloud, but they have to have a license.
Yeah. Okay. Just want to say thank you to Francois. Thank you very much. And